everybody, it's Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by one of my favorite people, the always incredible Adam Kokesh. You can find him at freedomline.com, and of course, kicking intellectual ass and taking names on YouTube. Thank you for joining us, Adam.
Hey, you know what? You're giving me way, way, way too much credit here. Like, always incredible? No, 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 no. I mean, my activism career has been like winning the lottery 10 times in a row. I really fell over backwards into this. And if you knew you were going to win the lottery one time out of 100, you'd be playing a lot of lottery tickets too. But there's a lot of stuff in between where I'm not very excellent that you just don't ever see.
Okay, well, as Jeff Berwick puts it, Adam isn't always incredible. Sometimes he's just great.
I'm great. Whether I'm performing great or great for you, I'll let you decide. But
All right.
I appreciate that very much, and I've been a full-time activist now for nearly a decade. Holy crap, I make myself feel old. I just turned 29 for the sixth time. That means I'm 34. And it's been incredible. I've learned a lot over the years, and I think back to how I was even just a few years ago. You know, my start in activism was Iraq Veterans Against the War, and I was an angry veteran and not particularly effective. But now that I've found a lot more peace with myself and peace with the message and understanding how really freedom is about love and harmony and respect for your fellow human beings, then I'm able to communicate it from a much more positive perspective, and it's really I don't want to say a blessing, but yeah, that's kind of the only word for it. Incredible blessing that I've been set up in my life to be at the point where I am now.
Yeah, and well, you've done incredible work, and I've mentioned it to you before that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it weren't for watching you and getting that kind of influence. Because there's so many people that talk a lot of talk, but you've really walked a lot of walk, my friend. So getting right into it, I wanted to first ask you a bit about guns because, of course, we can all remember when you loaded that shotgun at Freedom Plaza. That was a brilliant video. That was one of the most exciting things I'd ever seen on YouTube. But of course, that was followed by flashbang grenades and a lengthy prison sentence. And of course, I was out there along with so many other people demanding people to look into jury nullification and learn about what that means and what they can do to help you. And of course, coming from that, you are no longer able to carry. Am I right?
Right. Well, I got to correct you here. It was a 4-month sentence. A 4-month. Well, not sentence, I should say. It was all pending sentencing, and I ended up being sentenced to time served of 4 months. 2 of which were in solitary, which really wasn't that long. Can't call that a lengthy sentence. I like to think of it more as a government-induced, taxpayer-funded spiritual retreat, during which time I came up with just one really good idea. I mean, you'd think if I was in for a long time, I could have solved all the world's problems or something. But the idea for my book, Freedom, I started writing it when I was in jail, and it was because people sent me so many other great authors' works in the past of ways to communicate the message of freedom. And as the best rip-off artist in the freedom movement, basically, I just combined the best features of all of those books and put them in together into one. And so, I'm not doing the kind of, in-your-face confrontational activism. I think we can confront in a positive way and confront with ideas. And so putting the book out front, putting the message out front has been a major part of the transition for me.
Yeah, and of course I've been getting a lot of questions about this regarding your march on Washington several years ago, and exactly what that can turn into in the future, because of course there is a way to have a non-violent revolution. However, of course a lot of people at that time, rightly so for many reasons, were afraid for your life, for one, considering the whole plan in the first place was to go and march on Washington armed. But a lot of people have been kind of asking me about this, asking me to throw this question at you. Is there any plan in the future of any sort of nonviolent armed march on Washington?
I don't think the armed march it's probably not the best tool. I have a number of ideas in the works, and I don't want to betray anyone's confidence because I spoke to someone just a few days ago about some very exciting plans about something that we might do around the Clinton inauguration if Hillary wins in November in D.C. But they wouldn't be involving firearms, and I don't think until the government makes firearms the issue, and I'm not saying that the government hasn't been incredibly unjustly, unlawfully restrictive on firearms rights, but until it really is the central issue, I don't think it is the way to wake people up, to reach people with our message. Because, and as much as I'm pro-gun, obviously, I really don't believe that we can't render firearms obsolete eventually. That we can't come to the point where the idea of self-defense is unnecessary, and maybe that's idealistic, but maybe more practical on the way there is that we get non-lethal weapons that are on the scale of firearms. And if anything, I think that's what libertarians should be looking at when it comes to the arguments about security. Of course, as it stands today, it is highly unethical for anybody to try to confiscate guns from someone or to have any kind of restrictions on anyone's right to decide how they defend themselves on their own property. I think that's a universal ethical principle. In public, on other people's property, it's up to them. So where we go with this, it's hard to say, but really what we should be looking forward to as libertarians is how we apply technology to make things safer for people, to make things better for people. Mm-hmm. And if we got to the point where you could set phasers to stun and take someone out with a non-lethal weapon as effectively as you can with a firearm today, I would hope that firearms become obsolete. So I don't think that while right now in today's technology, while the gun is the only absolutely safe measure to protect yourself, or it has that absolute capability of stopping someone that no other device really does. Sure. Although I am a big fan of pepper spray and tasers. I have some videos about that on my channel.
Yeah, I was going to get into that a bit later on, but yeah, go on.
My girlfriend pepper sprayed me to test pepper spray, and it is thoroughly debilitating. I would still, if I was in a real security situation today, I would still rather have a gun too. Of course, as a felon, I'm not allowed to carry now, except black powder or pre-1900 whatever it is. Things that don't legally qualify as a firearm. But, really we should be looking at this from a metric of self-defense, not of the current technology, the gun, which is the best for self-defense right now.
Which, by the way, that video of you getting tased and pepper sprayed, I'm sure that was a great gift to the people that don't like you so much. But I'm glad that you elaborated on that whole idea about the Clinton inauguration not involving firearms, because some red lights were flashing on my computer. Big Brother was going, what? What's Adam doing now? But no, I totally understand where you're coming from on this. We could all probably agree that the world would be a better place without firearms. However, the fact is they do exist, and it is an individual's right to own a firearm, especially when we have the state carrying these weapons of mass destruction, especially when you see the government arming these drug cartels, arming these terrorist groups. We want to be able to, of course, defend ourselves. Well,
I want to just be a little careful there with the language you use. You say we could all agree that the world would be better without guns. It's not necessarily that. Because in the world that I envision, you'll still have guns for collector's items, for hobbies, for hunting, for all the things like that. But that we can render the idea of using guns against other human beings obsolete, unnecessary, and technologically irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm more thinking about the use of them by the state. We could all probably agree that it would be nice if the state didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. That would be a good day. But fact is, they do, and we need to be able to stay defended. And going from there, now one of the most important factors when it comes to breaking free from the state is independence and the ability to take care of yourself and your family. You've spearheaded this issue with your homesteading, and can you fill our viewers in on where you're at with that and why it's so important to be able to take care of yourself without reliance on another party?
Absolutely, and I think really this is my greatest act of civil disobedience yet, to build an off-grid, zero-waste, food-independent home and homestead without a permit. And right now, the county zoning department here in Yavapai County, Arizona, is threatening me with, hypothetically, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines if you really add up all the silliness they're throwing at us. But they have decided that they would rather negotiate a resolution without a hearing at this point. So I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to come to a point of understanding where I'll be allowed to exercise my rights. And I'm not trying to make an absolute stand here and say that like this has to be a perfectly government-free zone because I own this land. I mean, I'd like that. I've declared it such, but that doesn't mean that it's practically going to be. If I have to sign a piece of paper that says, you know, hey, I'm not going to put in a septic system, I'm not going to put in a well, you know, please just leave me alone. This is an act of First Amendment political expression. Everything I'm doing here, you have no right to interfere. Whatever the case may be, you know, I'm willing to do that. But because what this act of civil disobedience is about is really carving us out of space for a practical enjoyment of freedom, a practical enjoyment of our rights that has been taken away under modern bureaucratic governments in a really sad, pathetic, anti-American way. I mean, it is disgusting, and I know for me going through this process, I would have done this a lot sooner in my life, I think, if I had figured this out, if I had realized what I could do, but I was so deterred, not understanding what government was, not understanding that there are ways to stand up to it. I was deterred by the red tape, by the threat of force that's behind it, by the idea that, well, if I build a house, I have to let inspectors come. I have to have the government in my home. I can't have privacy in my own home while building it. I can't say that, you know, that my floor plan of my house, the layout of my home is private in a world where the government zoning extortionists can just come in and say, no, we have to inspect, we have to get, you know, drawings out, and all this other just really anti-freedom, anti-human rights kind of policy that says you don't have the right to live on your own land. One of the most disgusting things that they've thrown at us and as a threat for violation of their codes is you can't camp on your own land for more than 10 days in a row or 30 cumulative days in a year, and every violation is $750 a day.
Because government knows what's best.
You know, the ironic thing about this is that there's federal land. Like I'm sitting right here in my shipping container on my land, which is one of the first things we put on here in order to have a place where you can see. We have, this is the stack of books behind me here, Freedom Books, our big stash, and we have I'm in the hardware section by the door where I have.
I was gonna say that's a beautiful background you got there.
Thank you. They're very industrial. And then, but just over there is the Grand Canyon, and we're surrounded by national forest land where you can camp for 2 weeks without a permit. And really, if you go out there, no one's going to bother you. But on land that I own right here, they want to charge me $750 a day. You know, and I don't know if it's per person, per vehicle, or what, but they've pointed out, you know, multiple violations. So it raises the really absurd threat of fines that would go into the hundreds of thousands of dollars at this point if they really tried to maximize them.
Yeah, and
I don't think they're going to get away with it in this case.
Well, and I've spoken a lot about, well, I love gold. I think people should have sound money. I love the idea of being able to protect yourself with firearms. I love the idea of but I always get these messages. Well, you can't eat gold. You can't eat a gun. Well, of course, but that is where it comes down to the main point, is that we need to be independent and free of state servitude, which is what so many people have been just pushed into as it's the new norm, where people are expected to just, roll over in every aspect of life. I often say, name one thing in your life that isn't regulated by government, and some people will say, well, what about sleep? Well, check your pillow. You have a tag on your pillow that you're not allowed to even cut off because government knows what's best for you. Yep. Government wants to keep you safe, and they want a little bit of cash, while they're doing so.
Yeah, and what you said was so right on. It's not just those kinds of protections, but owning land, having real property, having a continuously occupied space that you can call your home, having food independence, that's real security. I went into the house I'm building is an Earthship style home. I went and took the Earthship Academy last October, and if you don't know what Earthships are, you absolutely should. Earthship.com, a brilliant building concept developed by Mike Reynolds, fully off-grid, self-sustaining homes built primarily from recycled materials, packed earth, tires, bottles, cans, and then a little bit of cement and steel involved, and whatever other traditional building elements you want to incorporate into that for the interior. And what he had is this idea, and a lot of people who were asking him to build homes were prepper types, and they were asking him to build in safe rooms and gun rooms and things like that. And he said, what, so that you can defend your tomatoes in a situation where there's that kind of desperation by a large group of people in a societal collapse. And what he said is that what occurred to him is, instead of trying to shoot people who are coming to steal your tomatoes, what you should be doing is teaching them how to grow their own tomatoes. And that's what he called tomato security. And where I live out here in Ashford, most people have that. They at least have chickens, they have a garden. Maybe they're not at food independence, but they're close to it, they're capable of it. And it's really important to surround yourself with people who are able to contribute without stealing in such a crisis. And so I've been encouraging people to move out here. Juniper Wood Ranch near Ash Fork, Arizona. It's a great area. There's a lot of plots of land for sale, and we might even be establishing a little piece of freedom here for building as well, as we see how our case plays out.
Yeah, I've been watching and I've been considering it a bit myself. Now, Adam, I can't help but notice that lately you've been quite nostalgic, sharing many of your older videos. You've got some of the most incredible, exciting videos on the net, but of all your videos, what are your top 3 in your opinion? Surely not getting maced and tased.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know if I've been sentimental. I've been sentimental about other things. I broke up with my fiance of 2 years.
Yeah.
Almost 2 years, about a month ago, and I've been really sentimental about things around that. I'm just starting to feel recentered after that. But no, the reason we're posting old videos right now is that I'm not making any more good ones. I'm never gonna top the classics. Like I got lucky, and now what I'm doing is more what I think is the rubber meets the road activism of spreading the message, of getting copies of this book out, of building our tour, building the campaign organization for Kokesh 2020. And to answer your question, it's kind of tough. It is a little bit like asking, which of your children is your favorite, right? Yeah. So there are so many that jump out, but the first one, the classic, would be the Jefferson Dance Party video, and my version of it only has about 2 million views, but there's so many other rips of that. There's probably another 10 to 20 million views out there on that, and it really is a great way of demonstrating the violence of the police state. So I that one is kind of my favorite classic. My kind of up and coming favorite now, it's got about 400,000 views, is Would Be Bully Gets Kokesh, Nonviolent Communication in Action. And it's really important for people who want to be in any kind of communication field, but especially when you're communicating in a way where you're asking people to change their worldview, that we use communication that is non-violent. And it's just metaphoric. Yes, I understand. Yes, it's not violent if it's communication from the libertarian ethical analysis. But when you use communication that judges people, that doesn't empathize with them, that doesn't respect that communication with them, that doesn't hear their feelings and their needs, it is, in that metaphoric sense, violent communication. But non-violent communication is how you connect with people. So my video that I'm talking about is a chance for, or is an example of me using this communication methodology of getting in touch with someone's feelings and needs first, when a guy wanted to beat me up for saying something bad about the military. Yeah. And I was not just able to talk him down from that, but to make a real connection with him and get him to take a copy of the book and to consider the message. And so I was really, really encouraged by that. And that's definitely one of my favorite videos. I hear a lot about that now. Being sentimental, I will say that my next favorite video would be my announcement engagement, but that's probably not what you're talking about right now.
Well, Adam, I mean, one of the I know you weren't really in this video a lot, but one of the things that I've played over and over again to friends to just show them how much the free market has been trampled on is the video that you did when you with the lemon liberation, I believe they were called.
Yeah.
When they're getting arrested for selling lemonade is just insanity.
Yeah. I can barely see that. Maybe that's not one of my favorites. It is one of the best videos on my channel. But I can't call it one of my favorites because I can't take any credit for it. It was a great day of activism, a great event, a great act of civil disobedience, and a great way to show children really how the state is the one that prevents you from having nice things. Yeah. All I had to do, like at that time, that was when I had my TV show. I had a cameraman, and he edited the whole thing. I just showed up and was like, hey, record that. Those guys are cool. and I had my little role to play in talking to the cops. But that's definitely one of the best videos on my channel. I appreciate you pointing that out.
And of course, I mean, I know that video that you spoke with that other veteran after that event, after he got pissed off at you for what you were saying. Even though the video was kind of grainy and dark, it was one of the most beautiful videos I've seen, because the way that you were able to communicate with this man, just like you were able to communicate with other veterans at Ground Zero and other videos, and I mean, it's that I feel, as not that I know what the hell I'm talking about, but I do have to say, as a fan, that's a really beautiful thing to watch, to see you, not, as you mentioned, non-violently communicate with people who have different points of view, and at first they're, really set off by what you're saying, but sometimes they say, like, the truth, it tends to kind of shake people by the shoulders to an extent where people feel repulsed by it at first, but once they consider it, they realize that you're right. And I found that video, as well as many other ones where you spoke with other veterans, there's something beautiful about that, because you had that experience yourself. Yeah. They had a similar experience, but a lot of people get that kind of Stockholm syndrome where they get kind of pulled into it, and they're like, well, I must have been right. I must have done the right things, because that's what I've forced myself to believe because of all this pain that's underneath it,
Yeah, you take away the enforcement class and the state ceases to exist. That's why reaching out and to cops and soldiers and talking to them, and the bureaucrats of the FBI and the IRS and those kinds of agencies or the Border Patrol even, that are that kind of wide scale enforcement. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the unethical behavior of the state happens, of doing or threatening violence against peaceful people. So I'm glad that you noticed that, and I hope people who are listening to this right now might take this as an opportunity and use me all you can, as a former Marine who learned the error of his ways and the error of the ways of militarism, to reach people who are in the military or who would consider joining the military. And if you can just get them to read the book Freedom, if you can just get them to consider the perspective that we bring to this, that there is no nobility or virtue in volunteering to kill for politicians, then that's where we can really make change. Make sure that the next generation won't put up with the orders, won't demand that people do violence against each other to serve their own insecurities, or to give them that false sense of security that they think the state can provide. But rather that we see past this, and instead of telling people that joining the military is virtuous, that being an entrepreneur is virtuous, being a good lover is virtuous, being a good member of your community is virtuous, being self-sustaining is virtuous. But being a dependent, violent cog in the machine who follows orders, who kills when politicians tell you to, that is not virtuous.
No, and on a slightly happier subject, I do have to mention this because I haven't seen you get asked this before. I don't know if you've noticed your Wikipedia page, but they claim you're a communist. And every time you try to, I've gone in there and edited on a few different computers, and I get banned from Wikipedia. Apparently, you are a communist TV presenter.
That's funny because I'm exactly the opposite of that. What I advocate is like the philosophical polar opposite of communism. But no, my Wikipedia page, it's funny because I really should stop referring people to that and get a little more of a fluff biography up on my website. It's been hacked, or I shouldn't say hacked, but whatever you call it, graffitied like that, a number of times. I think every time I go look at it, there's something else that you're like, that's not right. But for a while it was, my affiliates were Al-Qaeda and ISIS, just silly stuff like that. But yeah, it's happened since my start in activism was with Iraq Veterans Against the War, doing anti-war stuff. And they're the pro-war people, some of them, the people who are really behind that, who have a huge psychological investment, a sense of identity, of nationalism. If they didn't have this sense, this Americanism to cling on to, like that they would be, well, I think they'd eventually seek therapy and become better people, but it's sort of filling a void for them. And when you challenge that, it can really raise a lot of ill will.
It's usually a good sign when the left calls you crazy, red meat eating conservative, and then the right calls you that crazy, communist or something that don't have any conception of what you actually are, and that's usually a good sign that you're thinking outside the box. Now, I didn't want to get into this because I'm such a huge fan of yours, but for the sake of journalism, I must. You've been getting called a cuck a lot more than usual lately because of your support for Gary Johnson. Now, I'm going to let you have the floor in a moment, but I'm just going to go over a few different issues before I give you the floor. So, here's a few concerns I have. So, number one, he's not against the Federal Reserve. Number two, he says he agrees with Bernie Sanders 73% of the time. Number three, he thinks businesses should be forced to produce for people they don't want to do business with. Yep. Number four, he thinks Planned Parenthood should be federally funded. 5, he's pro-United Nations. 6, he's pro-TPP. 7, he thinks the free market bankrupted coal. 8, wants a CO2 fee to fight global warming, so basically a carbon tax. And, of course, 9, his VP has voted for some of the most extensive extreme gun control in the country. And 10, cutting it short, he buys into that Coney 2012 garbage. So with that said, I like the guy as a person, and I understand why people like him, but how on earth is he a libertarian? As Ron Paul said, you can't call yourself a libertarian when you say you are fiscally libertarian and socially liberal. That sounds more like an identity crisis. So shouldn't we be looking to ourselves to change the world instead of essentially sitting on our hands waiting for Gary Johnson to do it for us? You have the floor.
Well, obviously, I'm not waiting for Gary Johnson to do anything for me except represent the party and take advantage of this opportunity that the party has given him in 2016. I'm going on tour. I'm going to be in 64 cities in 63 days. We're going to be giving out free copies of the book in every city. We're reaching people. We're challenging people to embrace the true message of freedom and libertarianism. And I've never said that Gary Johnson is a libertarian except in name only. And that might sound harsh, but that's the truth. And what you enumerate there of his positions perfectly demonstrates that he is at best a libertarian-leaning moderate, not a libertarian. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people in the party, and I've said this publicly, despite my desire to show them that it's not about just ideology or purity. It's about moving the ball forward for freedom. I think a lot of them are not the kind like me who go out and actually talk to people, and they're kind of afraid to communicate the message from a philosophical, ethical perspective, and they feel more comfortable putting Gary Johnson out front. As long as Gary Johnson is on the main stage in American politics as he is right now with an L next to his name, I want him to do well. I want him to wave that banner and that brand and smear it on as many brains as he possibly can so that some of them will say, hey, what's a libertarian? Let's really find out. And they're going to find out it's not Gary Johnson, and they're going to be setting us up for success in the future. I think we could have done better than Gary Johnson. I was endorsing and supporting John McAfee pretty hard, and I was very disappointed with the outcome of that. Austin Peterson, also not quite a libertarian, more of a paleo-conservative, but very close, very principled. I think that he would have been a much better option, speaking from his philosophical perspective. I would have been happy to actively support him in the general election. Darryl Perry would have been a much better option philosophically than
he's a cool guy.
Candidates. But really, the only correct position in running for president, the only ethical position is to say, as I am completely unfit to be president, and so is everybody else. And I am running for not president. The only thing I will do as president is initiate the process to dissolve the entire federal government, to abolish it immediately and declare it of no authority whatsoever. That's how we move forward from this. That's the only ethical position to take when running for president. So, yeah, in a way you could say I'm doing the lesser evil thing, but it's not because Gary Johnson is the lesser evil. I disagree with him on a lot of issues, but I do believe from my experience with him personally in New Mexico when I was running for office, and before that when I was living in New Mexico when he was governor, from his record as governor, that he is a man of integrity. He is someone that you can at least trust to be consistent in who he is and his mindset, and that if he were to win, he's not going to be someone who's going to turn around and say, never mind, I'm going to be emperor for life. No, he means what he says, and he's demonstrated the ability to live up to his word.
Well, I certainly understand the pragmatist position on this, and I don't think that he's an evil. I certainly think that Gary Johnson is a good guy. I've watched him in many interviews. He seems very sincere. I just think he's a little backwards on quite a few things and doesn't quite understand the whole point of freedom in general, though he has good intentions.
Absolutely, more than a little backwards. Completely backwards on some issues.
Well, absolutely, and the carbon tax is a great example of about as far off into left field as you can get when it comes to taxation, especially. But I figured we'd get into something a little fun here, Adam. Would you like to play a little game? I wanted to ask you a bit about Hillary Clinton, but I thought, you know what would be better than just asking you about Hillary Clinton? I wondered maybe we could set a timer, 30 seconds, and see how many things that we can say are terrible about Hillary Clinton. And I don't mean just Hillary, I mean Bill too. Let's just talk about how terrible the Clintons are, because I always do enjoy a good Clinton bashing, and I have a lot of examples. So I was wondering, would you be in on doing this?
You know what? I want to lower your expectations for me on this, because I am so beyond caring about Hillary Clinton. I really cannot bring myself to care. She is a violent, criminal, statist who will murder and lie to get into power, to protect herself, to serve her sponsors and her interests. But that's all you need to know. Do I need to enumerate, well, it was this, and it was that, and it was the rape thing, and the Benghazi thing, and the State Department, and the emails, and no, like, who cares? You know, that who she says she is publicly, even as a statist, is dangerously and criminally wrong in so many ways that it doesn't help wake people up. No one, and having gone on tour last year, I was on the road for 6 months straight, did about 120 events, and I asked people all over the country, how did you wake up? And none of them said, I realized that this particular individual was evil or bad or criminal or escaped accountability. It was always a much more positive process of quiet intellectual contemplation. So I don't know. You probably got 30 seconds of Clinton bashing you could pull out of that. But yeah, I don't want to play that game. It's almost like empowering them to say that they're relevant, to say that Hillary Clinton's personality or record are relevant is not as helpful as pointing out that she is a statist, that she is her actual position is contrary to basic standards of ethics, and that there's nothing that we would change if we convinced everybody that Hillary was an evil person if we didn't explain to them why that policy behind even her public popular statements is fundamentally wrong. It doesn't.
No, that's understood. I understand that. However, at the same time, first of all, I'm a little disappointed you don't want to play my game, Adam. But second of all, yesterday, I did an interview with Juanita Broderick, who of course was raped by Bill Clinton, and of course she has a big reason to be out against her. And I've just kind of been going kind of full force on her lately because, of course, yeah, Donald Trump's terrible too, but. I just find that a lot of the Donald Trump people have a chance. They've got a chance. I mean, the Hillary Clinton people do too, but they're so far behind the curb when it comes to things that they could support someone who is just so openly terrible. Like the things that she's responsible for, people like Vince Foster, in the 90s getting murdered, and then his office getting ransacked by the Clintons, like the night of, like, come on now. And all these women, tens and tens of women that have come out against Bill Clinton. It's just, I see why people like Donald Trump, but they're wrong. However, they've got a chance to say, okay, well, I'm going to go on this kind of path where it's like, I hate globalism, maybe I should hate nationalism too. However, Hillary Clinton supporters are like, well, she's a wonderful woman, she's a feminist, she stands for women's rights.
See, so here's where I fall on that. I really got to point this out as a differentiator in my approach with my activism now, especially, is that you could try to sway an election, you could try to sway a few votes, but really you're kind of just pissing into the wind, and you know it. There's a certain futility to that, and so I have found for myself much greater satisfaction in knowing that what I'm doing is waking people up right now. That what I'm doing is changing how people think right now. That brick by brick, we are building revolution. We're not playing piddly games for votes or personality, popularity contests. No, we are freeing one mind at a time in order to change the future. And it's not, you could fight the state inch by inch while they laugh and take a mile behind your back. But when you wake someone up, they don't go back to sleep. When they're truly aware of the message of freedom, the fact that government is unethical, obsolete, and should be abolished as soon as possible, they don't turn around and go vote for Hillary Clinton or anybody like her ever again. If you convince someone not to vote for Hillary Clinton, you're going to have to start from scratch again to convince them not to vote for Biden or not to vote for Trump or not to vote for Bloomberg or Bush or any of these other dynasty establishment, whoever it is, politicians who are going to carry forth the same basic policies of statism. So you inoculate someone against that forever when you get them turned on to the message of freedom. I think that's so much more important, and I get way more satisfaction out of knowing that my activism is contributing to that.
Sure, sure. And you're a much nicer guy than I am. I kind of just go full force on her, but to each their own. And I totally get where you're coming from on this because, of course, one of the number one things is to get to someone's heart, not to, try and sway them into another form of collectivism or statism. And I think that's extremely important. Now, just going off of that, of course, you probably heard, I don't know, you're out there homesteading, so like maybe sometimes you miss the news, but in the Clinton leaked emails, she did kind of go into the fact that she's going to claim that, oh, well, I'm just kind of against semi-automatics, but once we get into office, I'm going to basically eradicate the Second Amendment. Those were in the emails, and she's talking about literally eradicating the Second Amendment. So not to go into Clinton here, but won't there be a revolution?
She couldn't do it anyway. She couldn't pull that off. And it's because there are enough people who are awake, at least to the issue of gun rights. See, that's the case where you can wake people up to an issue, and again, you're inoculating them against ever supporting any kind of restrictions on firearms from government, as opposed to saying, well, we're gonna try to campaign for Donald Trump and argue that he's better than Hillary Clinton. That's not gonna do it. That's not gonna I'm just making
certainly not
argument here that standing on principle is more practical than bashing candidates.
Oh, hey, don't worry about me. I'm the one that's kind of getting at you over Gary Johnson. I have no plans to support anybody. But yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. I just see Hillary Clinton's face in the media and her eyes bulging out of her head like a crocodile getting squished under a bus, and I just want to run away and take cover. It's a scary time to be alive, but at the same time, it brings a lot of optimism to the forefront where people, I can't possibly miss how insane things have gotten because it's right in our faces. So maybe, just maybe, people are going to start finally standing up and standing up for themselves as individuals and not some kind of coercive collective that'll force everyone into slavery to the state and slavery to mass taxation, slavery to mass regulation. And a big example of that is what you're dealing with over there with the homesteading. The fact that you have to deal with these over-the-top regulations that infringe on your individual property rights, which no government creates those rights, that you are born with them. But of course, the government wants to come forward and say, well, you know what, for safety and, well, for, let's just face it, a giant cash grab, we're going to fine you on that.
It's for the children.
Yeah. Won't somebody think of the children? So with that said, Adam, of course you have some amazing gear on, oh, well, actually, I just skipped a question. I'm super professional today.
All back here. This is our warehouse.
Well, we're going to get into that in 1 second. I managed to skip a question because I am that professional. So I wanted to ask you because you've put out so many great messages over time. I know you took down like 2,700 of your videos or privatized them, which was unfortunate for my sentimentality when I wanted to look back, but that's the way it goes. But can you give us your bottom line message? What gets you out of bed each morning and prompts you to spread the message of voluntarism and freedom?
Well, I'm glad that you ask it in those terms. And just so people know, for quality control, I took off the weakest videos on my channel and just set them to private so that we can provide the most effective conversion experience for people who do stumble on my YouTube channel. at youtube.com/Adam Kokesh. Or if you go to thefreedomline.com, that's where you can find everything I'm doing and get the free book downloads. So to answer your question, it's knowing not only that what we are doing is fighting for humanity to embrace a higher standard of ethics, but knowing that the transition to a stateless society, a more ethical and harmonious society, is inevitable, and that right now we are on the verge, on the cusp of a major shift for humanity, that we are about to go through this transition of abolishing the state. And I don't know if it's going to be 10 years. That would be very optimistic. Maybe we could like really start globally full force in the next 10 years. But, you know, maybe it's 30 years, maybe it's 100 years, but it is within our lifetime. Remember, we're all going to live a lot longer now because of this technology, but we are living in the most incredible turning point in human history. And as much as people think that I'm brave for what I do, it is absolutely not true. Everything I do scares the hell out of me. You know, I don't ignore that fear, but I'm settled with it, because I've been able to put it in perspective. You know, getting arrested scares me. Filming cops scares me. Giving speeches scares me. Giving interviews, I mean, even in a fun, casual format like this, yeah, it scares me a little bit to think of the stakes, and that really what we're doing is taking human lives in our hands, in the sense that we have the potential, by understanding this and sharing this message, to save lives that will be ended or would be ended by the state in the future. So what really scares me more than anything, what puts all of those fears in perspective, is thinking that I could be on my deathbed, hopefully surrounded by a dozen grandkids, saying anything, saying, "Oh, I watched that happen. Yeah, I was there for that. That was cool. I saw the end of the state." As opposed to being able to say, I did everything that I possibly could when the time came to make sure that this happened as smooth as possible, as peaceful as possible, as fast as possible, so that my children and my grandchildren could be born on the other side of statism. And to be able to say that that was what I committed my life to. Really, anything other than that, knowing what I know now, really, that's what scares me. But I know every day, by facing all of the little fears, the fear of getting arrested or even of getting shot, the fear of losing my home, of losing my land, of going to jail, they're all insignificant. And I feel so much happier and empowered and with a sense of purpose in my life by saying that it's to avoid that greater fear of not having done everything I could to serve humanity in the greatest way possible with this gift of life that we all enjoy here on Earth. And I just, you know, the more I share this as a burden to do something about this, for me, the lighter it gets. And so I love the process of sharing it. I love being able to communicate it in a way that gets other people inspired and motivated to get out and have that same attitude towards their fellow human beings.
And it's worth mentioning that bravery isn't necessarily measured by lack of fear, but fear, or looking fear in the face and taking it head on. I mean, you say that you're not exactly brave, and I would beg to differ. Just watching what you've done over time, you can have fear. That doesn't mean that
even then,
you're not brave.
Even then, what I do, the way that I don't think it's brave, because courage is for uncertainty. When that fear cannot be put in perspective. What I do is much more like calculated risk and having confidence in my calculations. And I can break this down for you real quick here, in that the way most people look at activism or risk arrest stuff, or just, you know, any kind of bold venture in life, is they see, like, you know, on the cost side, the risk of arrest as literally an X factor that could be infinity. And maybe just by virtue of my luck in my activism and getting arrested with the Iraq Veterans Against the War at the start of my career, I'm able to calculate that. But then on the benefit side, I'm also able to see the value in the long-term spreading of the message of freedom in a way that I think most activists don't. So I do that calculation where I can quantify the risks down from infinity to something that I can wrap my head around, and the benefits I can take away from this, you know, sort of lower level nebulous, well, it might be good there, well, I get the sense of satisfaction. Like, no, I know that what I'm doing is going to get me more emails from people who say, you know what, Adam, thanks for waking me up. Thanks for changing my life. And I get that valuable satisfaction and that feedback. of knowing that I'm contributing to this great leap forward for humanity.
Yeah, that's better than any amount of cash you can ever obtain, is just that being able to spread on to other people, and other people doing or taking influence from what you do and doing it themselves. And just on a side note, you mentioned, nervousness and lack of bravery going into interviews and stuff like that. I totally get where you're coming from there. Are you ever worried that you're going to end up on some show where someone's going to question you on being some kind of Rothschild Zionist shill? Because I can't believe some of the questions or the comments I see on your Facebook page from time to time. It's absolutely insane.
No, drunk trolls on the internet are not an accurate reflection of reality.
Well, I only say that because I get the same kind of comments too, and I find them quite humorous. But anyway, going on from that, of course, you have some amazing gear on your website that I'm sure many of your viewers would like to check out. So let our viewers know about the Freedom Line and what they can do to support you.
TheFreedomLine.com. You can go there and find everything I've got going on right now. If you want to help out with the presidential campaign, we are building the organization in our forums. You can click on forums. If you want to donate, at this point, all the donations are going to support the tour, but generally donations go, to getting books out for free. But that's what the tour is, right? And we're getting ready to go on a big tour right now, and we really want to encourage you to help promote it by bringing your friends, inviting people to come out to these events, because they're going to get a free copy of the book, and they're going to get a great positive experience out of this and a great positive introduction to the message of freedom. So I hope you support that effort. Normally, most of the donations go to printing books and mailing them out to people who are doing a good job distributing them, students mostly, people in their, just in clubs and communities. We sell them at near cost in bulk on our website as well. So I hope you'll check that out. And I don't know everything else. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of important things, but thefreedomline.com. That's where you can find everything I got going on right now. I just got on Steemit too, so check that out if you like.
Oh yeah, Steemit's definitely worth checking out. And for those that keep calling it a pyramid scheme, it's not, because they're not paying money into it. You don't have anything to lose. You put stuff up there. If you don't have a big network, you don't get a lot. But if you do have a decent network, you can make some good money off of it. It's a great new innovation, worth checking out. And thefreedomline.com, everyone should check that out. I've read your book, Freedom. Excellent, excellent read. And I really suggest that everyone else, all the viewers out there watching, read it as well. It is a beautiful handbook.
Free audio book. You can listen to a book these days and tell people that you read it.
Well, who reads a book on the audio tape?
Oh, it's me. It's me. Yeah.
You get to hear Adam's voice in the car. All right, sounds good. Well,
already.
What's that?
You're not sick of it already after 45 minutes.
Oh, man, 3,000 videos later, I'm still loving it. So, Adam, thank you so much for coming on Wham again. It's always an incredible conversation with you. You do incredible work, and most importantly, it's the influence that you have given off, which has gotten so many other people involved, which is such an important point to point out, because so many people suddenly are coming out of the woodwork, and they're stepping up and doing their own thing in their own way. You don't have to do it exactly like Adam, or exactly like me, or exactly like the guys at all these other independent medias and groups, but you need to look out for what yourself as an individual, the rights that you have, your children in the future, other people, because it's not, we have to move away from this this kind of collectivist coercive force that's pushing us all into one category around these borders, these walls that we're building around us, and saying all of you must obey and do the same thing because 51% says 49% has to do this. That's just not moral. That's not fair to anybody. We as individuals have to be individuals, and independent ones at that, and that is what a revolution looks like. As Henry David Thoreau once said, if everyone decided on one day to stop paying taxes, the revolution would be fought very non-violently in one day. I'm sure I'm paraphrasing a bit, but the message is clear. We have to be independent, free human beings, apart from any rulers or any state that tells us what's best for us, because they never do, and they don't care about you, and they only want to be able to control you. And that is where I'm going to leave it off. Thank you very much, Adam. keep up the incredible work, and I'll see you on your Facebook live feeds where I troll and write hilarious comments. At least I think so anyway. So thank you very much, Adam. Take care. See you next time. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.